It's time once again to go racing.
It does not get any better than this.
The pressure is really on now.
Yes, it's pole position. Lights out and we're racing in PSGL.
The first lap has been absolute chaos.
What an overtake.
Oh no!
I've never seen anything like it.
Side by side again. This will be settled right at the end. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to PSGL. We are back after our short little break last week. Hope you guys all missed us, and we are back with a vengeance at the Hungaroring for the Hungarian Grand Prix. My name is Luke Etheridge, and joining me in the commentary box, as always, is Aidan Carter. Aidan, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Excited to be back after a week's break. It's been such a strong season so far, and these guys have had a little bit of time to rest, and now they're straight back into it for the next 4 rounds again. So almost like it's a reset for some of these drivers, and I think Lord knows some of these drivers maybe need it after the first few rounds we've had. Yeah,
certainly. You can't win a championship in the first few rounds, although judging by the standings at the moment, one driver has certainly tried to do that. You can definitely lose it. If you cast your mind back to, it was 2 weeks ago now, back at the French Grand Prix, we all know it was good around the Paul Ricard circuit, and it was Matthew Alder who claimed the victory in very tricky conditions. You might remember him getting a puncture on the final laps of the race. He took the win there, and in second place it was Max Wiesel, Paxi and Dan Erko getting the move done on the final straight, never mind the final corner, to end up claiming third position there. What that has done for the Drivers' Championship, which is popping up on your screen now, Matthew Alder now leads 56 points, 18 points ahead of Isma, who is second. Max Wiesel is in third. Dan Erko shoots himself up into fourth with that Fusilio, Fabi, Jensen, Valters, Casper and Argiano rounding out the top 10. And Matthew Alder's performance in the Red Bull is enough single-handedly for them to be leading the Constructors' Championship as well. A bit closer in that, just 5 points ahead of Williams. Ferrari 2 points further back, and you can see at the bottom, Alfa Romeo still the only team yet to have scored any points. And it's been a dominant performance so far this season. I think we kind of expected this a bit going into the season from Matthew Alder, that he would be running away with things, but definitely on occasion, Isma, Max Wiesel, and we saw last time out Dan Erko, looked for a bit that Dan Erko might be able to hold on to that win on that really odd set of intermediates.
Yeah, it was a really interesting race last time out in France, wasn't it? It was very much a race of strategy, kind of similar to what we've seen in maybe the Silverstone race, of course, where that was obviously weather affected as well. And I think the worrying thing for some of these drivers is that Matthew Alder has won these past few races, and they've all been very different from one another. I think Silverstone got the strategy correct, and when it looked like Wouters could have been on the right strategy at the midpoint of the race. Of course, last time out, like we mentioned, Dan Erko looked like he was on the right strategy before he had to pit late for a new set of intermediate tyres. And of course, Matthew Alder's won just by being at the head of a DRS train as well. So it's going to be difficult for these guys to really overcome Matthew Alder, who's been so strong so far this season. But like you say, Isma's been up there all season long, Max as well. They just haven't found that extra 1% to beat Matthew Alder in a full race. So I'm sure that maybe the week's break and maybe Hungary is a little bit of a shift for them. Yeah, certainly. I mean, qualifying, he's the only driver to have had multiple pole positions so far this season, but we've seen Isma get a pole position as well at Monaco. We saw Max Wiesel get one at Portugal, and there were 2 tracks where qualifying we know is extremely important at Monaco anyway, and it proved to be the case at Portugal just because of the wet weather conditions that were there, so that made qualifying a bit more important. We'll have to see how it goes tonight. Hungary, it's another circuit where qualifying is also crucial. First used in 1986 and described as Monaco without the barriers. Yeah, Monaco without the barriers, like you say, it is so difficult to overtake at this track. The only real overtaking opportunity is turn number 1. You can go for a move at turn 2, but the moves you often see at turn 2 are people just trying to repass, having been overtaken at the first corner. So yeah, really, really difficult to overtake. This race is pretty much all about strategy. We'll talk about strategy a lot more once the race comes around, but yeah, that is what this race is going to be focusing on, is who's on the right tyres at the right time. And of course, because it is Monaco without the walls, that inherently means that it's quite a difficult track to master. It's really easy to invalidate, it's really easy to spin and overheat your tyres as well. So this race may be a bit more of a race of attrition than we've seen so far this season.
Yeah, certainly. Definitely going to be one of those where I think we could see a lot of penalties. Getting it right with the traffic in the trains could be crucial once again. Maybe if you can pull off the undercut right, or maybe even the overcut like we saw Matthew Order do so successfully at Monaco. That could be the tactic to go for. But let's head into the race then. Glorious sunshine for this qualifying session, and we have got a few drivers starting to head out on track. First one of them is Shazoo Jensen. He's going for the set of the medium tyres, and you might see a few drivers try this actually, to try to get into the top 10 here on the medium tyres. That can really be a great strategy, but given how close the grid, it will be exceptionally difficult.
Yeah, really, really difficult to pull it off. You'll only be able to pull it off, I think, if everybody else does the same thing. So yeah, it's a bit of a shot in the dark. The only other thing that I can maybe think of with them going out on the mediums early on is just to save a set of softs. This track, you're not likely to get 4 runs in unless you invalidate a couple of early runs in the session. So some of these drivers may be already planning ahead, thinking they might not be able to qualify inside the top 10. And if they aren't able to qualify in the top 10, they'll at least have a fresh set of softs that they can use in the race that will give them a little bit of an advantage if they're on that alternate strategy. So a couple of strategy notes for these drivers on mediums, but it's more probably just about trying to get a banker on the board and save tyres.
Yeah, I think definitely so as well. They know if there's any safety cars in this race, and given the fact there's quite a few places, especially in that middle sector, where you can get it wrong, wouldn't surprise me if I see a safety car, and that could change everything. Track position is really king around this place. Let's see then what Shazoo Jensen can do then as he heads around this circuit. The man's 7th in the championship at the moment, crosses the start-finish line, heading downhill now towards turn number 1. Reprofiled slightly in 2002 to make it a much sharper right-hander and easier for overtaking as well. You get a second boost of DRS as well out of the first corner. Downhill once again towards turn number 2. This long apex left-hander. Be very careful to stay off that great curb and try to keep it over to the left-hand side as you fling the car through turn number 3. Climbing up the hill where Felipe Massa had that huge impact, of course, in 2009. 27-0 through the first sector. A tricky turn 4. And it is extremely easy to do what we have just seen Jensen do. Extremely easy to invalidate the lap. Hamilton's done a 26.9 though coming through the first sector. Let's follow him round now as he heads into turn number 5. Again, watch out for that curb on the right. Now into the chicane at 6 and 7. And this really sets off the technical part of this circuit. Getting caught in traffic here can ruin your laps as he swings the car through 8 and 9. The rear of the Alfa Romeo just looking a bit loose through some of these corners, flat out through turn number 10, a slight dab on the brakes as you come into 11. Jensen getting right out of the way, and it's 53.5 through the final through the second sector split. Now coming into turn number 12, turn number 13, this long left-hander, the exit of this corner makes it almost look as though you're going into the pit lane, but Hamilton will be staying out there. Into 14 again, it looks like he's almost drifting the rear of the Alfa Romeo around the final couple of corners. He comes towards the line, and it's a 1:15.3 from Hamilton. A very respectable lap time indeed on that set of mediums. We'll see if anyone looks like they're going to set a good time on a set of the softs. I think Philip Walters is just heading through the final couple of corners now. 1:15.3 though, very good on mediums, as Lars sets a 1:14.6. And Lars, he's going to feel like he's got a point to prove tonight, returning, of course, after that 2-race ban.
Yeah, returning, like you say, it's been a bit of a poor season so far from Lars. One of the drivers that really needs that reset. Obviously, the race ban not helping him at all. So he will hopefully try and jump a bit further up as wow. Look at that lap time for Max Wiesel. That is a stonking lap time this early in the session. A 14 flat to go half a second clear of the rest of the field at the moment. Everybody else is in the mid to high 14s. That is a stamp of a mark there from the Ferrari driver at the very top. We'll see if anybody else can get close to that time at the moment, but it doesn't really seem like it. Fabi is invalidated on his lap in the Ferrari. Assacombe's invalidated. Cornet is invalidated as well. Denerco also invalidated. So a lot of drivers struggling with track limits at the moment. Max not one of them. He is miles out in front at the moment.
No, miles out in front, and that is already faster than what we saw in F2 and F3. We haven't really got a comparative quali time for this track. We didn't race on it last season. The last time we raced was way back in season 26, the very first season that we did on F1 2020. Wilson Hughes took pole position. It was Prinens, a bit of a blast from a past, who finished in second, and Matthias van Herven finishing in third. Jensen does a 1:15.4 on that set of medium tyres. It's very clear, extremely early on, if you want to get in the top 10, you are going to have to go for a set of the soft tyres. And I can tell you, we are expecting a slight chance of rain towards the end of the race, round about between the 45 and 60-minute mark. That could be good, well, could be interesting if you're outside the top 10 here in qualifying. Do you go for a set of mediums in the race, or do you go for a set of hards? Ideally, you'd only want to make that one stop, of course.
Yeah, of course, that's if the rain does come down. Of course, with the approximate weather system that we've got in this game now, it's hard to rely on the weather being strong enough for the tyres to be correct. Of course, Silverstone, when the rain came down nowhere near as quickly as anybody expected. It came down a little earlier, but it took a good 8 to 10 laps for the track to actually get wet. So yeah, it's really, really difficult for some of these drivers to predict how quick the track is going to get wet. So do you rely on it actually happening, or do you just bite the bullet and go for a regular strategy and hope that you are far and out ahead of other drivers to not suffer in that sense with the wet weather towards the end of the race? Nikita's just gone second in the Mercedes on a 14.2. Denurk on his second lap on the softs went third just a second ago as well. So they're a bit closer to the top, but still no one within 2/10 of Max at the moment. Yet to see Matthew Alder complete a lap. He's on a run at the moment. He's just coming through the first sector now. So this is probably going to be the battle for pole at the moment between Max and Matthew. They're the two strongest, it seems, so far.
Yeah, we'll follow the Red Bull driver around then as he slings it over that curb at turn number 3, up the hill. You might even see a few drivers, if they're feeling brave, go for a move into turn number 4, but you'd have to be extremely brave indeed. At a 26.5 at the moment, puts him about 7 thousandths of a second ahead, or 700ths of a second, I should say, ahead of Max Wissel. And it is this middle sector, Aidan, where the drivers, you'd expect them, this could be the key part of the circuit. It's very technical, very twisty. You've got to make sure that you've kept enough life in the tyres to get a good run through the middle part of the circuit.
Yeah, really, really important. The whole middle part of this track is about compromise. You've got to compromise the corner before for a better run through the next corner, of course. It is so difficult to be able to push through that whole sector and keep it within the bounds and not spin the car. I mean, a prime example of that is turns 8 and 9, the 90 left into the 90 right. You don't want to use all of the road in turn 8 because you compromise, you run through 9. So that is the key to that sector. Matthew Alder crossing the line now and goes to the top of the timesheets by only 16 thousandths of a second. It was a strong start to the lap, but compared to Max, he sort of faded a little bit towards the end, but was just fast enough in the first sector to hold on to it for the time being.
Yeah, good lap there then by Matthew Alder, 1:14.066. Like you said, it was that final sector where things just started to go a bit wrong for him. So we have seen the majority of the drivers then go out on their first runs, and it is Matthew Alder fastest at the moment, Max Wissel in second, Yakita Daneyko and Zander your top 5. Brock, Lars, Walters, Casper and Hamilton, who did set that first lap on a set of mediums. He's already going for the softs. He is in 10th place, but still plenty of time to change. Still could see plenty more of these 18 drivers coming up. Fusilier, one of the, I believe, only driver in the lead to actually still race on the controller. He's invalidated on that run. Fede comes across the line, 1:16.052, so got to think he's got more time in the bag as well. And Isber's just heading around the first sector for his first run.
Yeah, first one, he invalidated his first run on the medium compound tyres and darted straight back into the pits. So 26.5 for the first sector. That is comparable with Matthew Alder's first sector. So we'll see if he can maybe maintain that throughout the rest of the lap. We did mention it that tyre temperatures are they're on the edge. They're teetering on the edge around this track. It's very easy to overheat. So sometimes you maybe do have to sacrifice a little bit of pace in the start of the lap to make sure your tyres aren't overheating by the very end. That's maybe why Matthew Alder's final sector wasn't the best it could have been. Through the middle sector now for Isma, a little bit wide through 11. Keeps it on the track, but he has of the lap compared to the two people at the very front. So about 2/10 down at the moment on the top 2 in the standings at the moment. So we'll see him through the final sector. This should put him in and around where Giulietta and Denurko are on the grid at the moment, but I don't think he's going to challenge Matthew Alder and Max at the very top of the timesheets. There you go. Goes right in between Denurko and Giulietta into P4. Not a bad lap from Isma, but we've seen him on pole twice already this season, so it's fair to say we're maybe expecting a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe expecting a bit more as well when you consider track evolution as well, let's not forget. So perhaps maybe would have expected him to go slightly closer, but just over a quarter of a second behind. Maybe we're being a bit too harsh in the early parts of this session. We have got some drivers, of course, going out on another lap. Hamilton, he looked like he was going to be one of the first to set a second run. He's not going to be able to improve at the moment. Jensen coming through the middle sector, so we'll get to see a comparison here between the mediums and the softs. Runs very wide indeed. I think in the end decides to back off of that lap. Obviously still pushing right towards the end. I thought for a second he had backed off, but maybe just trying to avoid that invalidation coming out of turn number 11. Very smart indeed if that was the case, but no, Jensen has now dived the car back towards the pits. It looks like a lot of drivers are struggling on this second run to get a bit of clean air. Philip Walters at the moment, pole position at Monaco, so that very twisty technical circuit. We'll see if we can translate it here. And he's 2 temps up at the moment.
Yeah, 2 tenths up at the moment, doing a solid job so far, trying to get up to close to where his teammate is at the moment. 2 drivers really struggling in this session so far are Cornet and Fabi. They've invalidated all of their laps that they've completed so far in this session, apart from one for Cornet, but it wasn't competitive on a 16.2 as across the line does go Philip Wouters into P6 on a 14.4. So again, a solid lap from the Williams driver, of course, locked in that manufacturer's battle at the moment with Red Bull. Isma obviously the lead in the way for the Williams team. Wouters didn't get off to the best of starts in Portimao, but has steadily improved as the season's gone on. Yeah, a lot of drivers towards the back still really struggling in this session. Cornet is just cruising back to the pit lane. Fabi is going again on the same set of softs. A 39.9 is definitely not competitive. He is 25 seconds off the pace, but he's coming through the first sector now, and he's got a whole heap of traffic running up towards turn number 4 through the first sector. He's already 2 tenths off the top, and he's lost the car through turn 4 and has hit the wall. It's so easy to do. He gets away with it in that he's not out of the session, but still Fabi really struggling in this qualifying session as Asicome now goes into P3 in the AlphaTauri.
Yeah, Asicome's gone up to P3, and the Ferraris both struggling on their laps. Fabi, we didn't really get to see too much of what he could do. Max Wiesel was 2 tenths up on his personal best coming through Sector 2 and had a massive moment through the final corner. Anyone that was watching some of the lower tier qualifying F2 with Jess and Owen earlier in F3 as well with James Head and Logan might have seen a couple of drivers in both of those tiers managing to struggle through the final corner, similar to what we saw 2014 Sebastian Vettel do, where he just lost it coming through there, although I think in both of those cases they did end up making contact with the wall. Let's see what Casper can do then. Thought he was going to get us so close to getting that podium last time out, that elusive podium that seems to have avoided the former esports driver for a while, but starting in 11th place wouldn't be too bad here. He's going to try and work his way up the order, just displaces his teammate there and moves up into 10th, and there is a massive gaping chasm between Lars Kramer in 11th and Hamilton in 12th place. 7 tenths of a second is bigger than the gap between the top 11.
Yeah, it's a huge gap, isn't it? Hamilton still hasn't improved from his medium run. Neither has Jensen and neither has Eagle. All 3 of them haven't improved so far. And the 4 behind them are just drivers on softs that don't seem to have the confidence at the moment in this qualifying session. So, yeah, they're really struggling. It's dependent on, like we said, there's light rain towards the end. I'm wondering whether they are just deliberately now not going fast because they don't want to be in the top 10 on a set of softs. So we'll wait and see. Matthew Alder was on a lap, but Matthew Alder's first lap was so good that even he can't match his own first lap, and he was nearly a 10th down in the first sector, found a couple of hundredths in the middle, and then is invalidated, I think, through turn 11. So Matthew Alder struggling to beat his own time as it stands. Everybody on their second runs is really struggling. We've not really seen anybody improve apart from Asicome and Wouters. They've been the only ones to gain places. Brock's on a lap, but he's also invalidated. So this suggests to me that in this race today, I think penalties may play a massive factor in this race because so many drivers are finding it difficult to keep it on the road.
Yeah, and also a thing I've noticed, Jacques Ita, fastest in the first, well, faster than his personal best in the first sector, slower in the middle. Fede as well, another outplayed driver, was fastest in the first sector, slower in the middle. So not many improvements at all, which is not what you would expect to see. The track is very quiet at the moment. I think we have got Matthew Alder just heading out for a second run, and again he's invalidated there. I think just coming through the middle sector. What's 2 temps up, purple in the first sector, he'll be diving it back towards the pits. So we are now just waiting. Hamilton and Jensen coming out on an outlap, but things not quite what we'd expect to see in a qualifying session. All the big laps happen in the first 5 or 6 minutes, very quiet after that. What will the final 3 minutes and 45 seconds bring? Matthew Alder, Max Wiesel, Asicome, your top 3, Daneko, Jakita, Isma, Walter, Zander, Brock and Casper are your top 10 at the moment. Hamilton and Jensen again going early. I suppose if you go early on, especially in the end of the session, that does give you time, if you fueled it, to get 2 runs in. The downside is you might catch a lot of traffic on outlaps.
Yeah, very possible you could catch traffic, and of course with the dry start to the race, if you do start inside the top 10 on a set of 2-lap-old softs, the softs go off so quickly here that it could actually affect you quite heavily in the race. So it's running the risk. You may as well try it because at the moment there are so many people without a representative time on the board that they need to go out early to give themselves a couple of runs in the session so that they can at least try and improve on their times. But yeah, I would have said that we're deliberately seeing people back off to not be in the top 10. But everybody seems to be making mistakes at the moment and struggling to keep it on the road. Hamilton, though, brilliant first sector. That's pretty much dead on what Matthew Older did on his fastest lap. So Hamilton on his second run now on the set of soft compound tyres, looking pretty strong in the first part. Can he maintain it for the rest of the lap?
Let's not forget, he was the fastest qualifier at Monaco. Did have that 5-place grid penalty, though, for collision in qualifying, and then it all went wrong for him in the race. So it's not too surprising to see his pace is up there, and he's now gone purple in the middle sector as well. He's 9 tenths up at the moment, but you'd expect him to find at least another 3 or 4 in this final sector. Alfa Romeo yet to score any points so far this season. Could they put themselves in a superb chance by starting on pole position at the Hungarian Grand Prix? The Venezuelan driver makes it round the final corner, so close to invalidating. 1:13.881, fastest by nearly 2 tenths of a second. That is a marker from Hamilton. He goes fastest of everyone. Now can Matthew Older, Max Wiesel match that, or will we see someone else come up from the back that we're not expecting? Farby, he's obviously gone a personal best in the first sector, but I think he's just taking it a bit easy on this lap. Still, well, actually, he's only a few thousandths off the fastest time at the moment. So Farby, if he can keep it this clean, might put himself a long way up the order as well. And we spoke about how both Williams have been consistent so far this season. Generally, both of the Ferraris have been up there as well.
Yeah, they really have. Fabi got caught out in France with the poor strategy, so he really struggled to get a good race. But before that, he's been a solid performer so far this season. Been in the top 10 pretty much every race before France. So yeah, definitely a contender so far this season for a good run in the championship standings. It's been a good middle sector as well for Fabi on this lap. We'll see him come up towards the line, around the final corner and across the line, and he goes P5. He lost a bit of time in that final sector, actually, did the Ferrari driver, but it is still a solid lap on the board from him, and he goes from the very bottom up to P5. So now drivers are starting to get their runs in, but Hamilton's lap is really strong. I'm really surprised at how good that lap was, and it was all coming at the end of the lap. He wasn't the fastest in the first sector, but the middle and the final sector were miles clear pretty much of what anybody else is doing at the moment. Max Wiesel's on a lap. He's coming through the second sector though. He's nearly 2 tenths up, so the Ferrari man's going to try and get back on provisional pole.
Yeah, the fastest man in the first sector, though, was Jacques Eaters. Lost a bit of time from the outright fastest in that middle sector, but let's see what the Mercedes man can do. He's only got 1 point this season with a 10th at the French Grand Prix. Hasn't been able to attend every race. He crosses the line and ends up staying in 7th place there. Doesn't find any time at all in the final sector. Max Wiesel shoots himself up into 2nd place, and that is going to be it for him. Checkered flag will be out very shortly. We'll see who else is setting times at the moment. I think we've just seen Dan Urko and move his way up. Xander's into 9th place. Isma's gone fastest of everyone on a 1:13.874, and Matthew Older has invalidated, so he's not going to be improving at all. Brock comes around the final corner. He's going to be first man to finish his lap. He goes up into 8th. Jensen's crashed just before the finish line and has knocked his front wing off. The order all changing at the end.
Yeah, all changing. Like you say, Isma stealing provisional pole away by, look at that, 7 thousandths of a second. He was kind of nowhere all of the session and has popped right in at the very end with a good time. Pretty much in the same fashion as Hamilton. Asacombe wasn't improving on his lap. He's backed off in P5, will stay P5 for the time being. It's really up to the McLarens, and neither of them are on laps at the moment. So they're outside of the top 10. Fede's not improving. Cornet's on a lap, but he doesn't look like he's improving either, and he's backed off actually before the final corner. So I think that is the Aston Martin driver's session over and done with. Fusilio's on a lap coming through the second sector now. He's a 10th and a bit up on his personal best, but I don't think it's going to trouble the top 10 at the moment.
No, a 10th and a bit up. It was that final sector where I think he just backed off on his earlier lap, but even if he sets a similar final sector to some of the drivers around him, he's not going to get higher than Jensen or Cornet by the looks of things. So one Mercedes just inside the top 10. It looks like the other one is going to be quite a long way out of that. Heads towards the line. Ends up finding more time than we thought, but still 12th place, the best he can do. Casper has backed off his laps, so for the second time this season, it is Isma on pole position. Hamilton in 2nd, Max Wiesel in 3rd, and Matthew Older, in the end, his first lap time was the only clean one he got.
Yeah, bizarre really, isn't it, for Matthew? I mean, we say 4th is a bad quali for Matthew Older, but that's just the level he's kind of put himself at so far this season. But bizarre to say that he did such a good first run and then just couldn't keep it on the track afterwards. He had the pace. There was definitely improving sectors in and about that qualifying session. He just could not string it together for a full lap to get into the 13s and challenge the top 3. So that may be a little bit of a bugbear for him in the race. If he's struggling to keep the car on the track consistently to be fast, that could be something he needs to look out for in the race. And of course, we've mentioned it already, it is so difficult to overtake here. It's quite a long run to turn 1 from the grid slot. It's one of the longest ones we'll see on the calendar. So he's got an opportunity there, but beyond turn 1 on the first lap, it's going to be all about strategy for Matthew Ward if he wants to try and win his 4th race in a row.
Yeah, it is indeed. And Bisma, the man closest to him in the championship, still a long way to go, but if they finish as they start, that gap would be down to 10 points. And I think given how dominant he's been in the last 5 races, Matthew Alder, we'd have been expecting that gap to be a bit bigger. Philip Walters with that alternate strategy pole position of a 1:14.4. And given the fact that we are expecting some rain at the end of the race, we possibly think we're going to get some rain at the end. Depends how early it comes, we believe, between 45 and 60 minutes, so that could really spice things up. But it is Isma, fastest by 7 thousandths of a second from Hamilton in the Alfa Romeo. Max Wiesel only a further 200ths back in 3rd. Matthew Alder, championship leader, he starts in 4th. Danurco and Asico make it an all-Italian 3rd row of the grid. Then it is Fabi, Brock, Giacchita and Zander. Wouters gets the alternate strategy, as will Fusilio. The 2 McLarens are on the 7th row with Casper and Lars. Very nice touch from Lars to have the Ukrainian flag on his icon there. Eagle is 15th, Fede is 16th, and Jensen and Cornet, the final 2 drivers. Jensen unable to get a clean lap on those set of soft tyres, and that was really the story of the session for quite a few of these drivers. Plenty struggling to get clean laps in when it really mattered.
Yeah, kind of bizarre, wasn't it? The middle part of the session, like I said, I thought maybe some drivers were deliberately backing off just to make sure they didn't start inside the top 10, but then we saw a lot of drivers improve at the end. So, yeah, really, really bizarre that a lot of people struggled in the middle part of that session to get a clean lap in. I think you've got to say Jensen's been one of the stronger qualifiers this season, so he is massively out of position compared to where we usually see him on this grid, down at the very back of the grid. And I'm going to be intrigued to see how Hamilton does in this race. Of course, like you say, he was the fastest qualifier in Monaco, didn't get the pole, and of course, because he was dropped 5 places on the grid at Monaco, it pretty much ruined his race from the get-go, unfortunately caused an incident on the way up towards Massenet. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do now that he's got some actual clean track and is at the front of the field for the first time this season. And of course, crucial for Alfa Romeo as a team since they've got no points on the board.
Yeah, definitely. Zander, I think, as well, just inside the top 10, so that might prove to be good, having both their cars up there. Being at the front, you should avoid any incidents. It is a very tight turn 1, like you said. It's quite a long run towards the first corner as well, so you wouldn't be massively surprised if there was any incidents. You can see our predictions there on the left-hand side of this screen, just around about there. Matthew Alder for myself. I promise I wasn't just going for the boring choice based on the championship so far. And you've gone for Danurco. They're starting in 4th and 5th, but again, it's not like it's a bad qualifying, but around here, not ideal, or could all depend on this first couple of laps.
Yeah, it really could depend on the first laps, like you say, and I've mentioned it a few times this season, but qualifying isn't the be-all and end-all in F1 2021. It maybe was on the previous game, but this game is... You do need some solid race pace to be good. You've been good in qualifying, but if you don't have the race pace, if you can't manage the tyres well, then you're very likely to plummet through the field. So I think the 2 drivers we've chosen, Matthew Alder and Danurco, you've got to say are definitely drivers that are more favoured in races. So look out for those 2. And of course, Danurco has such a good run in France. So if anything, he was probably the star of the show, despite Matthew Alder winning that race. He was the star of the show, especially with that final lap that he pulled off as well. So yeah, got to keep an eye out for him. I think France, maybe he's rejuvenated himself a little bit. He got off to a slow start, but he's been slowly creeping back up the championship order, and I expect him to maybe continue that momentum. Yeah,
we'll have to see what he can do then at the Hungaroring on the outskirts of Budapest. 4.381 kilometres, 2.738 miles, 14 corners then, and those 2 DRS zones, which will be also crucial. But let's not forget, there's actually only 1 DRS detection point. As we take a look at the tyres that everyone has gone for, we said someone might risk a set of the hards outside of the top 10, and that man is Philip Hadler. H Eagle has gone for a set of the white-walled hard tyres. It's going to be a struggle for the first few laps, but if that rain, let's say that rain comes around lap 30 and he's got those hards lasting to the end, and he's got track position, could be in a great place, could Eagle?
Yeah, he really could be in a great place. Like you say, being a bit further down the field as well, it's not going to be difficult for him to keep up, I don't think, in the early laps. He may lose a couple of places to Fede and Jensen, but I don't think he'll lose really that much in terms of time. So Yeah, he may as well try it. He may as well try something different. If there's an early safety car or something, he can switch maybe to a set of mediums and that can save his race. But if there is no safety car playing a part and the rain does come, then he is technically on the best strategy. It's just whether he can maintain the pace for a full race.
Yeah, and for everyone wanting, Philip Hadler must be Patrick's Hadler, long-lost brother. I do apologise to Patrick for that one, for getting his name wrong, but hopefully we'll get a chance to apologise in person if we get onto the podium later on this race. Did it at Monaco when we weren't expecting things, and has put some good performances in at the moment. Walters is starting in 11th place. He'll be hoping for a good run as well, and it is Isma on pole position. It's mean pole position and alternate strategy pole position for the Williams. They are really hoping for some good results here today. Cornet just slotting in then to 18th place. Can the Aston Martin driver get his first points of the season? As we now just sit and wait for the lights to come on here at the Hungary ring. And we've got 5 lights. They go out and we are underway for the Hungarian Grand Prix then. Not held long whatsoever. And what are the starts like? Max Wiesel's got a good start here. He's going to try to get alongside Hamilton. But it is going to be Isma leading into turn number 1. Max Wiesel trying to go all the way around the outside of the Alfa Romeo. And further back, it looks like Danerco was trying to go all the way around the outside of Matthew Alder as well, but couldn't quite pull that one off. So it is as you were for the top 5 drivers for now. Although Asacombe looks like he's trying to make a move. And in fact, Alder's all of a sudden got himself past Wiesel, almost making contact. There's a big slider in the background. That's Danerco who's dropped down the order to 8th place, but he's managed to get a hold of the car. So everyone has kept it relatively clean for the first few corners. No major incidents, so there are a few drivers, Eagle and Danerco, definitely having some big wobbles in the early stages, but it is Isma, no such worries for him. He's got the lead by 0.6 of a second at the moment from Hamilton, Alder and Max Wiesel, and that just shows around this circuit how difficult it is. It looked like Max has got himself up into 2nd place, goes offline ever so slightly, now he's down to 4th.
Yeah, really crucial mistake there for Max in this race. I think in his desperation to try and go for a move on Hamilton at turn 2, he feigned down the inside and Matthew Alder caught him napping and just drove clean around the outside of the Ferrari. So brilliant move there for Matthew to get himself up a place on this grid. Danerco as well, well held coming out of turn number 3, but he was kind of forced a little bit wide by Asacombe. It's kind of the nature of the corner really. Danerco forced that wide, lost the rear of the car off the track, but managed to hold it, dropping a few places further down. Eagle has dropped to the back of the field as we maybe predicted on those hards, but he is still in touch with the drivers in front. Nobody is in at the end of the lap for front wing change, so a really clean start to this race. It's now all about where the first pit stop's coming for these soft runners. Danerco is already trying to work his way back through the field. His first target is Brock in the Haas. He's trying to get him offline into turn 2 and through turn 3, but Brock can easily keep that car flat through 3, so Danerco is not going to be anywhere near close enough for a move up into turn 4.
Yeah, Brock, he's replacing as a full-time driver Suku, who's going over to the PC team, I believe. Someone might be able to correct me in the chat. I believe the mid-season sign-ups aren't too far away from open, meaning or may have already opened if you want to join any of our PS tiers and the PC ones as well. But Danerco really putting Brock under pressure, but at this part of the circuit, it's pretty much single file. Where the gap is looking like it might be opening, Asacombe briefly dropped to about 0.8 of a second behind Max Wiesel there. He is the AlphaTauri meat in the Ferrari sandwich at the moment. 3 Italian cars all nice and together, and the 4 cars at the front of the field can barely be separated. Hamilton's got back within around half a second of Isma, but it is the long game around here. They'll be going quite a long time on this set of tyres, you'd think, unless someone might take advantage of the fact that the entire field is close together. Someone might go for an extremely aggressive undercut.
Yeah, it's very possible the softs wear off so quickly that if you're someone maybe like Fabi or Brock, you can come in and maybe catch a few of these drivers off guard and get ahead of them. And if you can manage your tyres towards the end, it's the perfect strategy to go on to. You may as well try something a little bit different if you're further down. You don't want to follow the leaders because you'll be doing it for the full race. We've already seen so far it is difficult to overtake. So got to try something a little bit different, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see someone like Fabi, maybe even Asacombe, try something a little bit different. He's already starting to lose touch just a little bit with the top 4, so he may as well try and give himself the strategic advantage by coming in a bit early. I think the earliest we'll probably see someone in is the end of lap 4, I would say, is the earliest they can come in, go for mediums and possibly get to the end, but it is cutting it a little fine. It's really concentrating up at the front. I thought Isma would drive away at the front of the field. That is not happening. Hamilton's all over the back, and Matthew Alder's right there as well, and so is Max Wiesel. The top 4 really close together at the moment. Yeah,
and this could be intriguing now. This, of course, DRS was activated at the start of this lap, so the first time they'll be able to use it because of a detection point is at the end of this lap. And Hamilton, you've got to say, if he can stay within 3 or 4 attempts, he should be close enough to give it a go. He's thinking about taking some different lines here, perhaps went too deep into the penultimate corner, and that might compromise him through the 14th and final corner, and that might just allow Isma to stay safe for now. We'll have to wait and see whether Hamilton is closing in enough. He's definitely closing in. Let's not forget, you got a double dose of DRS, and he sent one down the inside there at the last minute. Thankfully, Isma saw him coming. I don't know whether that was a late move or a late defence, because it looked like Matthew Alder was going to try and dive bomb one up in the inside into turn number 1. But that is a marker from Hamilton and Matthew. They are not afraid to send one from far back here. And sometimes, especially around this circuit, they're the type of moves you've got to make.
Yeah, if you're racing the right person as well, like Isma there, you can get away with a move like that. Isma, of course, saw it coming, gave him the room and still held the lead. So if you're racing the right person, you can definitely pull a move like that off. But I think that was more Hamilton maybe getting a little bit spooked by Matthew Alder. Matthew Alder was feigning to the inside, trying to get Hamilton to defend the line. And Hamilton, in his worry of being overtaken, then ended up having to turn it into an overtaking move, because otherwise he would have just driven clean into the back of the Williams. So, yeah. Close escape, close call, very narrow escape for the two of them to get away with it for the time being. But what that has done is brought Asicom and Fabi back closer to the top 4. And the more they start fighting, the more they start holding each other up. And if someone comes in unexpected at this point in the race, whilst they're still battling, that could really catch some of these leaders. Out. We've got our first one in. It's Yakita from 9th position.
Yeah, Yakita then coming in from 9th position with how close the field is. That's good news for, might be bad news for Isma, but it's good news for Philip Walters, his teammate on that set of the medium tyres. Down the inside this time comes Hamilton, all locked up, and that's only going to end up with one thing. That's going to end up with Isma doing the switchback. He read that one coming from a mile off. Mr. Hamilton, you're going to have to think of something different next time around, but you can just see how close it is. Thankfully for the Alfa Romeo driver, Matthew Alder was not able to take advantage of that. He's definitely trying, but you don't want to be doing that too often and locking that front right tyre up. Yes, he'll be using a bit more tyres anyway, stuck behind Isma, but he'll be using even more if he keeps flat spotting, and that could really put him under some pressure. So needs to be smart about where he thinks about this move, perhaps even worth just setting it up into turn 1 and going for a long one round the outside into 2.
Yeah, that's maybe the better option, isn't it? Trying to get them offline in turn 1 and then go for it at 2. That's maybe the better thing to do. Or maybe just wait for the pit stops. Battling right now maybe isn't the smartest move. You can see on their deltas, they're losing time now. Hamilton's the best part of 7/10 off his personal best, despite a near personal best first sector. So yeah, they're really starting to struggle for pace. I wonder if anyone's reacting to the pit stop of Yakita. None of the top 4 are coming in. I don't think, in fact, anybody's coming in apart from Denurko, I think. Denurko's in. Oh, Fabi's in as well. So from 6th and from 8th, Denurko's in. Xander's in as well. I'm not surprised those further down the train are going for the moves while the leaders are battling. Hamilton now defending from Matthew Alder into turn 1, and Matthew Alder getting really sideways there. I don't know if he got helped by Max Wiesel, but he got really sideways midway through the corner, and that's completely stunted his run on the way down towards turn 2. So they continue to fight, and they're just going to hold each other up a bit more. And now Asicom's all over the back of these guys. Where has Yakita emerged in all of this? Yakita's going to come out ahead of Fabi and Denurko, a one lap undercut, and Yakita's gone from a net 9th in the train to a net 6th. And Denurko and Xander, interestingly, have gone for the hards.
Yeah, Denurko and Xander clearly playing the long game. The only reason that Matthew Alder got such a good one on Hamilton is that the Alfa Romeo had a massive side coming through the final corner, and then Alder almost going in sympathy into turn number 1, and that almost cost him a place to Max Wiesel as well. So perhaps a bit of a lucky escape there for Hamilton. I really did think he was going to get overtaken into turn number 1, but he gets away with it this time around. Yakita has now got the gap down to within 20.7 seconds of the leader. He's closing in about half a second a lap at the moment, so this could well put, Asako, Max Wiesel and some of these others under pressure. We'll have to see when they come into the pit. Eagle, the first man then to get a 3-second tyre penalty, as we've got the first one of our leaders to bite the bullet. Max Wiesel into the pit, gets it slowed down for that 50 mile per hour, 80 kilometres per hour speed limit mark, as here's come Hamilton, this time round the outside of Isma. This could work a bit more. He's going to find himself getting squeezed on the exit. Can he keep the power down? Can he keep himself alongside the Williams? No, he cannot. So he's going to have to go the long way again into turn number 2. Just can't quite get that overlap. Great defending in the end from Isma, and good clean racing.
Yeah, really, really good clean racing. Like you say, it's proving how difficult it is to overtake, but fair clean racing from the pair of them. Hamilton's trying everything he can to get past and just can't find a way through at the moment. Isma's just defending very smartly, placing his car pretty much in the middle of the road, so Hamilton can't really commit to either side of the track. It's just causing the Alfa Romeo a bit of trouble. But what that is going to do is this is going to put Max Wiesel, well, I said it was going to put Max Wiesel in a great position. Nikita's jumped Max Wiesel with the fastest lap of the race. The Mercedes man is now ahead of both Ferraris, so Nikita's flying here, and with the top three battling so hard and not really reacting to the drivers behind, Nikita here is not that far away from being in the net lead of this race of all those that have pitted. Of course, his tyres will be older, it will be struggle towards the end, and maybe the top four don't think they can get the tyres to the end, but they're going to overcut as now Hamilton and Asakome are in, and Isma and Matthew Older stay out. I'm very surprised that Isma and Matthew Older haven't reacted.
Yeah, Isma and Matthew Older stay out. What this has done is obviously massively split the train up, and, you know, Philip Valtters now did get DRS there, but he's in third place. He's only 2.1 seconds off his teammate in the lead of this race. It's incredibly close between all these drivers at the moment, and you've got to say this does bode well for some of those drivers on the medium tyres, depending on how far up through the field they can get. Yakita then, he's just making his way down the pit straight now. He's side by side with Max Wiesel, who goes down the inside into turn number 1, but look at where Hamilton and Asakome are. All of a sudden, Hamilton's in a net 5th position, and you've got to expect that Isma and Matthew Older are going to come out behind the Alfa Romeo.
That's what I'm so confused by, Isma and Matthew Older going this long on this set of tyres. Yes, they'll be a bit better towards the end, but we know there's potentially rain coming, and track position's so key here that even with Denurko on the hards has managed to undercut Hamilton on the hard compound tyres. So if Isma and Matthew Older come in now, they're going to be very possibly at the back of this train, and that is behind a queue of 8 drivers. So they'll be in a net possibly 8th or 9th in the queue, having been at the front in the front three positions. So yeah, they're under a lot of pressure. Look at Wouters. Wouters has caught massively on this lap. Isma's in. Matthew Older stayed out. I'm utterly baffled by the strategy for Matthew Older. I usually trust his strategies because he's nailed them in the previous races, but this one to me is really bizarre because he is going to be at the very back of the queue now.
I mean, let's not forget at Monaco, there was the Parnell Racing Masterclass with Caden Forbes. I think he admitted afterwards he did get a bit of help originally with that strategy with Dylan Warren, where just going longer seemed to work out. And I wonder if Matthew here's just thought, you know what, if I pit now, if I do the same as Isma, I'm still going to come out behind him. I'm going to come out behind a massive train as well. So do I try to get these soft tyres as long as possible, have fresher mediums at the end, maybe just hope that the rain doesn't come? We're expecting it sometime, but oh, he nearly spun it there. Coming out of turn number 5, well held from the Red Bull driver, but now that he's in a bit of free air, he's still losing a bit of time to Philip Valtters, but only about a 10th or 2 this lap, whereas last time around, he lost about a second. So perhaps just dragging these tyres a tiny bit longer, or thinking I can maybe pull off the overcut here. You can see Isma has come out in the end still ahead of Hamilton, so not as much time being gained that time around as we saw some of the others, and Isma now, of course, is losing out in the dirty air. But will Matthew Older come into the pits this lap? He's exhausted his ERS supply nearly, which suggests to me he is coming in indeed. Championship leader, race leader into the pits. That promotes Philip Valtters into the lead, and that means at the end of lap 9, all of our soft runners have pitted.
Yeah, they're all into the pit lane, and crucially for Philip Valtters then, was only a second behind the leader of the race on that strategy. So those that started on the medium tyres here are still in a very good position in this race. They're looking very, very fast. In fact, Philip Valtters and Fusilio are dropping the 2 McLarens, so they're starting to get a bit further away in this field. Matthew Older then coming out of the pit lane. Where is he going to come out? Behind Isma. Isma's just past Denurko as well, who's behind Hamilton. He's got Asakome trying to go round the outside at turn 1, but Matthew Older pretty much forces him out of road. Matthew Older holds 15th for the time being, and that's going to put Brock on Asakome, and Asakome puts Brock on the grass on the run down towards turn number 2. That was a very aggressive defence from the AlphaTauri. I don't know if that was too aggressive or whether Brock was trying something that was never going to work, but either way, that was a very scary moment for the Haas, and they both just got away with it.
Yeah, just getting away with that whatsoever. And I can't imagine Brock's going to be too happy about that defence, but Matthew Older holds on to really where he was before, if you consider he was just behind Hamilton, but he's now in a net. Looking down the order, he's in a net 7th place. He has got the fresher tyres, but he's only got 1 lap fresher than Isma, who is now he's got 2 cars between himself and Matthew Older. Before the pit stops, he only had 1, so that's a bit of an advantage for the Williams driver, and it's an advantage for the Williams driver in the lead of the race as well. 8/10 of a second the gap between Valtters and Fusilio over 2 McLaren drivers swapping around as Casper gets himself up into 3rd place. These are 2 seconds back, and it looks like Frede's going to try and move as well on Lars Kramer as well. Tries it all the way around the outside. Can he get that better exit through turn number 1. Not as good as he needed. Lars hasn't got the DRS, and he's not got any ERS either, judging by that flashing red light on the back of the McLaren. But Fede just has to stay back for now.
Oh, sorry to jump in there, but further down, Matthew Older's gone for a dive move on Hamilton, has just spun the Alfa Romeo round. Oh my word, I was expecting the move to come, but Matthew Older, I think maybe a day late and a dollar short there, just drove clean into the back of the Alfa Romeo, and Hamilton's luck this season just doesn't seem to be happening, does it? That is another moment where he's been taken out of contention. He's spun now back behind his Alfa Romeo teammate, and I worry for Matthew Older, that could be a penalty coming his way.
Yeah, if we only caught the tail end of that after it had already happened, we saw Matthew driving away and Hamilton in the background facing the wrong way. So no damage though for the Red Bull driver. He's got away with it from that point of view, but if Hamilton does report that incident, he might not be getting away with that at all. Danico hasn't got DRS on the car in front, so you would expect the Red Bull driver to be able to make the move this time around. But a bit of controversy there. Championship leader in the Red Bull making contact with Hamilton, who's been fighting with all the races. Danico really struggling through turn number 13 there. I think he must have just locked up his front tyre, and then obviously since he's sailing off way wide into the distance, and he's going to have almost no resistance here against the Red Bull. There comes Matthew Older, DRS open, one of the most straightforward passes you're ever going to see around this circuit. And that is the Red Bull driver up into 13th place, but with a possible cloud over him, and the cloud's not really coming over the circuit at the moment. Just a few little white fluffy ones. 24 laps to go, but nothing for anyone to worry about. We'll get the interval gaps up all of a sudden. You can see the position changes there as well. Obviously, not really too much use at the moment because of the pit stops that have happened. Max Wiesel, 5.2 seconds off of H Eagle, and this is going to be what the front drivers are now hoping for, is that as the medium runners, well, those who started on the softs who have changed onto the mediums, they'll be hoping that they get held up as they come through the field.
Yeah, that's the crucial thing for their race, isn't it? That H Eagle holds these guys up, and I think H Eagle and Danerco both proving that the hards just don't seem to be that fast today. Danerco's already lost DRS range to Matthew Older in front and has got Asicome and Brock now closing in on the back. Xander can't keep up with these guys in front. Hamilton, of course, has just had a spin, and H Eagle's now 3 seconds off the back of the medium train that is really being held up by the two McLarens. They keep fighting one another as Lars Kramer's going to go for another move on his teammate here, down towards turn number 1, down the inside. Casper doesn't fight it. Is he going to try the switch back on the exit? He can't quite get the run on his teammate, so Lars Kramer's back up into 3rd position, but the hards just don't seem that fast. I thought they would have started to improve in Eagle's case by now. I thought he'd start to come back towards the medium runners, but that's just not the case. They don't seem very fast at the moment, and Danerco's just been overtaken by Asicome now, so the hards just are not a fast tyre today.
No, the hard's just not working out, and you see Danerco now down into 15th place, and Brock's going to lose a lot of time, I think, for the rest of this lap, stuck behind the Italian driver. So the Aston Martin going for something different, going for the hard tyres. It could prove out to be the right thing in 23 laps time, but at the moment, you've got to say not good whatsoever. And there's an example of dirty air. Brock just losing the rear of the car slightly coming through turn number 4, having to go off the circuit. I'll be very surprised if he didn't pick up a time warning for that. At the front of the field, though, it's been a great performance by Walters at the moment. Stayed in the DRS range at the start of this race. Hasn't really been pressured by Fusilio for the last few laps, and he's nearly got that gap up to a second, and I think that is more Fusilio's pace starting to struggle a bit as Lars and Casper are keeping the gap pretty consistent as well. Gap from Walters to the leader on the fresh mediums. Max Wiesel, 12 seconds at the moment. No safety cars, no retirements in the race at the moment. We have still got 18 runners, and unfortunately for Alfa Romeo, after a good qualifying, it is those two at the back of the field. Hamilton in 18th and it is Xander in 17th. As here comes Isma down the inside of Fabi. He's up into 11th.
Yeah, Fabi just losing touch now with Mats Wickson and Yukita, who are those leading on that strategy at the moment. Fabi just had a bit of a wobble at the start of the previous lap and just couldn't recover in the middle part of the lap, so he's dropped back now. Isma going to try and bridge the gap between Fabi and Nikita at this point in the race. Can Matthew Older find a way through? He's not close enough up towards turn number 4, so he's going to have to stick behind the Ferrari for the time being. He'll hope that Fabi loses DRS range to Isma now, but at the moment that doesn't look like that might be the case. Asicome trying to close in on the drivers in front as well, but that gap that has been formed by Danerco being in his way for a couple of laps has really cost him. So yeah, the driver's a little bit spread out at the moment on that alternate strategy. Max Wiesel is catching H Eagle at a rate of knots. That gap that was over 5 seconds about 2.5 laps ago is now 2.5. He's halved the gap already. So not long before they're on the back of Eagle. The crucial thing is Max has got to get past Eagle as quickly as he possibly can.
Yeah, it could all depend on which part of the circuit do you catch the Red Bull driver on. If he catches him coming through the final corner, straightforward DRS pass, job done. Catches him as he's coming through turn number 4, that's going to be a bit more awkward, and you're going to spend a lot of time stuck behind him, and that could really close the field up once again. Can Matthew Alder get ahead of Farby this time, though? He is closing in on the DRS, and I think he's using a bit more of his DRS as well. Is he going to send one down the inside this time into turn number 1? Farby sees that one coming, should get the better traction, though, on the exit, and has still got the DRS round the outside. That gap's going to be closed off, and another lap. The Red Bull driver is going to stay back, so Alder stays in 13th, Farby stays in 12th, but he's really starting to put that Ferrari under all sorts of pressure now. Still at the lead of this fresh tyre train is Max Wiesel, though, in net 9th place at the moment. He's now 2 seconds behind H. Eagle, and still about 11.6 off the lead of this race. Walters and Fusilio, in fact everyone that are on those fresh set of mediums is, oh, Cornet, he's had a spin now. He's going to have to surely let all of these drivers by, and you can just see how difficult it is to get out of the way at this point of the track.
Yeah, really difficult, and his tyres are absolutely cooked. You can see he can't put the power down. I think that caught Yukita out as well. Yukita was offline trying to avoid the Aston Martin and is now dropping further back. So Max Wiesel, we could drop out a DRS range here. The detection point is just before the final corner, so he's got one corner to get back within range of the Ferrari driver. He's not done it, so this is opportunity now for Isma to try and work his way past another car. But Isma, horrible understeer through the final corner. It's going to have to be a lot of DRS usage down this straight. The DRS, ever powerful on this game, is going to go for the move down the inside. Even from nearly half a second back, Isma was there by the end of the straight. And Isma up another place now into 9th position, a net second on this strategy. So despite the late pit stop, he's worked his way through the traffic cleanly and nicely so far. Matthew Alder, though, still stuck behind Farby, can't find a way through.
Yeah, I think he was actually closer coming onto the straight that time, but for some reason, perhaps lack of ERS use, and Farby perhaps using a bit more strategically as well, wasn't able to get the move. Cornet retires in the pits then, so he is our first retirement of the race at the end of lap 15, so still 20 to go. As you can just see there, the sliding on the fronts on Matthew Alder's car through turn number 5. Looked like he was trying to turn an oil tanker. Not the fastest race cars in the world as he was coming through that corner, really struggling to get that Red Bull anywhere close to the apex, and that is what costs you around here. You just lose chunks of time behind others' car, use chunks of times in the dirty air. Shouldn't be as bad in 2022 if the first part of testing is anything to go by. I know comments from a few of the drivers, Charles Leclerc I think saying it's better when you're more than a second behind, it's better when you're within half a second, but in between, in that annoying bit between half a second and a second, it is still a bit difficult to get really close to the car in front. Someone who is close to the car in front, though, is Max Wiesel, and this should be ideal for him where he has caught the Red Bull driver. He's not going to be able to defend whatsoever, and I don't think that's what Matthew Alder wanted to see whatsoever. Straightforward for Max Wiesel. He's up into 7th, and he's got a car in between himself and Isma once more, and if Isma can't get this move done soon, that could be crucial for the race.
Yeah, he's going to try round the outside of 2. That'll be a bold move if he can stick it around the outside. It'll be the inside for turn number 3. Ooh, it's really tight on the apex of turn 3. H. Eagle forced a little bit wide and gets a penalty for his troubles. But Isma gets the move done. That is race critical. Oh, Isma runs really wide at 4 but gets away with it. But that is race critical for Isma to get that move done. Like you say, lovely move as well. Committed around the outside and got it done. Great, fair and clean driving between the two of them, and now Max Wiesel and Isma have a great opportunity to gap the rest of these drivers on the same strategy. You can see already Yukita is being held up and is pushing that Red Bull through the middle part of the lap, but obviously there's no way through until you get to the pit straight.
No, and this is going to be good news for Farby as well. He nearly dropped about a second behind Yukita. He's now got that gap down to about 6/10 of a second, so really annoying for Yukita, just the nature of the circuit, and it is for position. They're on different strategies, but he's allowed to do this, H. Eagle. It's not like he's overly driving defensive at the moment. He's just taking his normal line. And around here, you take a normal line through the middle sector, barring a mistake, you're not going to get overtaken. So this time, Yukita is going to get the move done. We've got Matthew Alder really close to the back of Farby as well. Could he send one down the inside again on this late send? Farby goes for it on Eagle from a long way back. Makes the move work. Fair play to Farby for getting that stopped in time. And fair play to Eagle for seeing that one coming.
I thought that was going to be an airplane crash. That was such a late dive from Farby. Almost reminiscent of what Hamilton did early in the race. But yeah, how he got that stopped and got that turned in for turn 1, I do not know. And yeah, like you say, fair play to Eagle for seeing that one coming and backing out of the corner. Brilliant stuff from Farby. He's through, and that opened the door for Matthew Alder as well. Of course, Eagle's not going to fight his teammate, so they're now both through. And that strategy for H-Eagle is just not working. The hards are just so slow at this point in the race. He's got nowhere. He's just got no pace to fight, and all those that put on the hards at their first stop at the back of the field just don't have the pace to keep up. So, yeah, really, really long old race this is going to be for Eagle. He needs a safety car or some sort of carnage to bring him back into play in this race.
Yeah, still half the race to go. Who knows what could happen? We could definitely get some carnage. We've had some near crashes in this race. You do wonder whether we are actually going to get an incident. Hopefully, though, it is nice and clean driving. Walters, though, staying out in front at the front of the field. 9/10 of a second ahead of Fusilio. Lars now, the last few laps, hasn't really looked in too much danger from Casper. And there's Fede and Jensen behind. Max Wiesel still leading the fresh tyre train, even though he has got slightly older tyres. As this time around, Matthew Alder has made it stick. He's been training over the last 5 laps. Finally makes that move work. Gets himself up into a net 4th place. Now we're going to see if he can quickly get onto the back of Jakita. And let's not forget, he has got the fresher tyres, so if anyone has to not worry about punctures on the DRS, it would be him. His tyres at the moment are about 22% we're looking at on that front left tyre. Jakita, he's heading towards 40% already, and this could be a worry. They pitted extremely early on. There's still 16 laps to go. You've got to say Jakita's front left tyre is going to be pushing 80, 85%, possibly even 90% at the end of this race. And ask what happened to Alder last time. 70% got a puncture. We've seen drivers go 100% and not get a puncture. We really are in the hands of the gods.
Yeah, hands of the gods. He's pushing his luck as Yukita, isn't he? He's trying something. I think he's fully relying on the rain to come down at the end. But yeah, he's pushing his luck at the moment. He's got the track position, but whether he's going to pay the price for it later, as Lars Kramer's into the pit lane from 3rd on the road then. So he's the first of those that started on the mediums to come into the pit lane. What compound of tyre is this going to be for? It looks like it's a set of the soft compound tyres. Is that? No, it's hards. That's a very interesting strategy from Lars. Maybe he couldn't get those mediums any further. He was maybe close to puncture territory himself, but a pit stop at the end of lap 19 for a set of hards is a pretty bizarre strategy, I would say.
Yeah, it is. I think you'd if you realised your tyres weren't going to last, you'd be pitting a hell of a lot earlier than that, or you'd have started maybe on a set of the soft tyres and just tried to recover it at the end of the race and make some moves early on. But interesting from Lars there. He, of course, if it doesn't rain, he doesn't have to pit again. You do have to use 2 different types of dry tyre, and it would be interesting to see whether any of the drivers who started on a set of mediums gamble and go for a second set of mediums, which would force them to do an extra pit stop. But if it rains, everyone will have to do an extra pit stop. Here's the battle for the net lead of the race, though. 6th and 7th at the moment, about 8-9 seconds off the actual lead. It is Max Wiesel in 6th place at the moment in the net lead, and Isma right behind him, the driver who started on pole position, was leading for quite a long time, but that undercut proving to be absolutely crucial for the Ferrari driver. They're still catching, obviously, to those at the front of the field, but they're not really hammering that gap down as much as I thought they would. I mean, last lap around, Philip Walters did a 1:18.9 as Casper comes into the pits. Max Wiesel only a few tenths faster.
Yeah, it seems to me like you get past maybe the 12 or so lap window on these medium tyres, and they just kind of level out in terms of pace, and you're just kind of waiting for that puncture territory for the tyres to fall off. That kind of seems to be the window at the moment on these tyres. And of course, Max Wiesel tyres aren't really that much older than our leaders. They're only 7 laps younger, of course. So, and Yukita, of course, only 5 laps younger in 7th. So there's not that much difference in terms of where Yukita. It was interesting to hear from Yukita, despite having the oldest tyres of those that have pitted, has somehow managed to re-catch Max and Isma having lost DRS a couple of laps ago, and has dropped Matthew Alder. I don't know if Matthew Alder is struggling at this point in the race, but it seems to me like he's just struggling to keep up with the 3 in front at the moment in this middle part of the lap. We mentioned him having a lot of understeer in the dirty areas. His car looks a little bit on edge. I think he's maybe gone for a setup that's fast over a particular lap, but is a little bit difficult to handle, and maybe that's just not giving Matthew Alder the confidence he needs throughout the full lap. He is gained in the middle part of the lap, but of course the 3 in front will gain with DRS down the pit straight. So yeah, a little bit of a struggle at the moment for Matthew Alder to try and keep up with the net top 3 in this race. Wouters now in from the lead. Casper, interestingly, also pitted on that last lap for a set of hard compound tyres. We'll see what Wouters is going to go for here, but I would be surprised if it's another set of hards. It's a kind of a weird strategy, isn't it? It's kind of no man's land really for the strategy, and it is a set of hards. Very interesting. I think a lot of these people that started on the mediums are suddenly realising that they can't get the mediums to where they need to be able to put the softs on.
Yeah, they are really struggling at the moment. I think Asako must have picked up some damage because he's into the pits for a second time then. He's putting on a set of mediums and getting a front wing change, so less than ideal for the AlphaTauri. He will be a long way off the back of the field. That promotes Fusilio then into the lead of the race. Lap number 22 then. 21 lap old medium tyres. Fede just behind him. Then it is Jensen. And then it is Max Wiesel. And yeah, really, Jacques Ita has closed up that gap massively. The front three cars, the net front three, all within a second at the moment. And Matthew Older, he's about 1.5 seconds behind on this occasion. So this is going to be very intriguing now. Max is actually starting to struggle a bit. They're all pretty low. I'll say they're all pretty low on the VRS. Isma's doing a fantastic job at the moment. He's got about 30% more than the Ferrari, and that could be crucial as Matthew Older invented his own racetrack there, coming through turn number 11. Hopefully for his sake he did, well, I imagine. Surely he got a warning for that one. He was so far off track.
I would say that, but knowing how this game has been functioning for the past few months, I'm not quite sure if he did get a warning for that. He might have gotten away with it. That might have been why he went so wide, is trying to avoid that warning. So it is a strat for some of these drivers to try and do that, but you can see Matthew Order's burning his ERS and pushing so hard to try and catch these drivers in front. He's pretty much burnt all of his ERS trying to catch the three in front and is still not within DRS range. He's on the limit. He's got a bit more pace. He just can't seem to get there at the moment. I think his saving grace is the fact that Max doesn't seem to have all that much pace in the lead of this train at the moment and is sliding a little bit all over the place. I think if Isma got past Max, then it would be a real trouble spot for Matthew Order, because Isma seems to have a lot more pace and could just drag these drivers along. I think he's just waiting for the right moment to pounce on Max and not lose time himself. So yeah, Matthew Order could be being saved here on this lap. What he has done is drop Fabi completely. Fabi can no longer hold on to the drivers in front, and Brock is now right here as well. Of course, Asakone would have been in between these two drivers, so I don't know if Asakone maybe hit Fabi at some point trying to go for a move or not, but Fabi's a long way further back and Brock has caught quickly. So Brock all of a sudden is in a really good net position in this race.
Yeah, Brock, I was just having a quick look. He's been in all 4 races so far, scored points in the 3 that he's finished in. A best finish of a 6 as he was reserving for McLaren at the British Grand Prix. But yeah, at the moment, he's on for that 6th place again, and with the better tyres than Fabi, and he's going to have DRS to make the move maybe this time around. Could get his first top 5 of the season, which would be, I think, maybe the best result for Haas as well this season. So he's really putting in a good performance at the moment, is Brock. He comes on to lap number 24. The leaders are already on there, as here comes Isma this time, down the inside into turn number 1, gets that move done. Max Wiesel can't quite get the exit. Isma gets that second dose of DRS. That could be a crucial move at the end of the race, but Spaniard retakes the lead.
Yeah, I think that is a crucial point in this race now for Isma. Younger tyres, he's starting to see Max struggle. All the leaders are starting to come into the pit lane now, so the track's opening up in front. Isma now has a great opportunity to stretch his legs at the front of the field. He couldn't do that at the start, but Max may be struggling a little bit on his tyres, can't seem to be able to maintain the pace. That's allowed Matthew Order to catch back up, so Matthew Order is now back in this train. It's a 4-car train for the net lead of this race, but the fastest of those 4, you've got to say, is now at the head of the train. So we'll see what Isma could do. Already he's starting to gap Max quite a bit in this middle part of the lap. He's up to 7/10. It's through these final few corners where you'll really see Max struggling maybe with understeer if he's overheating those tyres. And yeah, he is dropping back quite quickly already from Isma. I don't think he's going to lose DRS to the driver in front, but it's teetering on the edge. So Isma now starting to stretch his legs now that the drivers behind are just starting to close in on him. Yeah, Jensen comes into the pits and he's managed to get 24 laps out of his medium, so surely you're going to come in off of those for a set of soft tyres. I was thinking Isma might have gone for it a bit more on that lap. Burnt quite a lot of his ERS perhaps, but maybe got that gap up to above a second on Max Wiesel, and that could have been crucial to get the win, but he's not done that, and he's just dragging Max along at the moment. Jensen has come in for a set of the soft tyres. He's going to drop a long way down the order. I think he'll be behind Casper as well in 16th place. But watch out for Jensen. What can he do in the final 11 laps? As things are still looking decidedly sunny at the moment. We're at the point of the race where we were getting told it might start to get overcast, but things looking very sunny at the moment. I'm going to be brave and say it, and I realise this could come back to bite me in the backside in about 11 laps time, but I think we're going to be dry to the end. It looks like it, isn't it? It's going to be a very quick turn if it does start to rain in this race, so that would be a bit of a shock to maybe some of these drivers, but at the moment it isn't looking like it's going to rain anytime soon. So normal strategies to the end. That's the course. We've had no safety car interference in this race, so it's been as fast of a race as we could have hoped for. So yeah, the rain maybe not coming at this point in the race. I've been keeping an eye on those on the alternate strategies further down, and we're seeing Asakone put in fastest laps in. Wouters is nowhere near setting fastest laps at the moment, and Wouters has caught the back of Xander and has spent 2 laps stuck behind the Alfa Romeo and can't find a way through. So even though he's got fresher hards and he's got a little bit more pace, he's finding it difficult to actually make any overtake stick on these hard compound tyres, and that's just dragging Casper closer back in, and it's going to allow Jensen to close in a lot quicker. And we've now, of course, seen Fede and Fusilio in for the lead of the race, and they're going to go onto the softs, so they're also going to play a factor in this race. I think Wouters, by choosing the hards, he's played it safe. He's finally got them moved on Zander now on the way into turn 1, but by playing it safe, he's maybe going to be under pressure from the people that were on the same strategy earlier on from him.
Yeah, very sneaky from Lars as well to get his way through. He's had about 4 weeks off, of course, with that 2-race ban and the break week that we had. Doesn't seem to have rusted his skills at all, though. Gets himself up into 11th place. There's still H-Eagle to come into the pits. He's the only driver, and he's definitely one, I think, that was hanging on, perhaps, for that rain to come. He's in 9th at the moment. Hamilton's got himself back up to 8th place. What could have been for him if it wasn't for that little incident earlier with Matthew Alder? But less than 10 laps to go now. Isma in the lead of this race, 7/10 of a second ahead of Max Vissel. This train with Isma, Max, Jaquita and Alder in there. Farby is a bit further back, and he's pulling off quite a good defensive job on Brock now. Danerco trying to stay in contact, but he does have that 3-second time penalty, and Hamilton, Eagle and Walters round out the top 10. If we check the penalties, it's 6 seconds for Eagle. He's not going to be a feature in this race, as he has to pit as well. Only 3 seconds for Zander and Danerco. So Alfa Romeo on for their first points at the moment.
Yeah, they are, as Fusilio is going to go round the outside of Casper at turn 13. That's an unorthodox place to get a move done, but with great traction, he goes around the outside and, crucially, kept within DRS range of Zander. So, opportunistic move there for Fusilio and Jensen with the fastest lap of the race, as you would expect. So, the soft runners now starting to work their way forwards in this part of the race. So, Fusilio now's got to get past Zander as quickly as he can. Zander doesn't get the best of runs out of turn 1, but has the DRS down to 2. So, Fusilio is going to have to hope that maybe Zander has a bit of a wobble. Look at the grip midway through turn 2 that Fusilio has on the Alfa Romeo. Is he going to go for a move up to 4 here? Zander really sideways, and Fusilio is going to try and go around the outside. Zander backs out of it smartly. Fusilio up another place. The grip on those softs compared to the hards is monumentally different at the moment, as Jensen's now trying to get a move done on Casper, maybe into the chicane.
Yeah, I was just having a look. Last lap around, Jensen did a 1:17.0. Zander was a bit slower than some of these other runners, as you'd expect, as he's on a lot older hard tyres. He was a 1:19.5. We're talking 2.5 seconds a lap at the moment. These soft tyres are going to be flying up the order, and that is big news at the front of the field. Alder gets a penalty, and with how close things are at the moment, I think that could well be, barring any incidents, his chance of a podium waving goodbye.
Yeah, that is definitely looking like it, isn't it? As Isma's now starting to stretch the gap at the front. It's just spreading out at the very front of the field. Interestingly, it's spreading out, and Isma's not used any ERS. In fact, in the lead, he's gained yet more ERS and is still kind of pulling a gap. So this is a great opportunity for Isma's championship here now that Matthew Alder's got that penalty. Fabi and Brock now going side by side through turn number 1. Brock just put onto the AstroTurf on the outside of turn 1. Is going to have another run around the outside of turn number 2 this time around, but Fabi again defending the line and holds onto P5 for the time being. But you can see that Fabio on those 21 lap old mediums is starting to struggle. Brock with such a good run through turn 3, he runs into the back of the Ferrari and couldn't get a run up to 4, so he stays in 6th for the time being. Fusilio's got the move on Lars Kramer as well, and now he's straight onto the back of H-Eagle, and already, despite Lars and that pitting 7 laps earlier than Fusilio with just a lap and a half has been able to get back ahead of the McLaren. That just proves that those soft tyres are so much faster.
Yeah, and just looking at the gaps in the field, I'll change to the leader gaps. He's only 4 seconds behind Farby on this occasion. We've seen how much more gap pace he's got than these drivers. Do not count him out for a possible top 5 in this race. He's about to get his way into the points past H-Eagle. This strategy has really not worked out for him. We said it might be worth a bit of a gamble, but it not proving to be the case. That is H-Eagle down into 11th place, and still he's got to come into the pits, maybe get a consolation fastest lap. But if you don't finish in the top 10, you're not going to get the fastest lap point. Max Vissel was closing up slightly then, nothing he could do. Brock's closing in again on Farby, and I think this time he's going to go for another lunge, but this time on the inside line into turn number 1. Just taps Farby ever so slightly, and that's going to allow Danerco to get the traction as well. The Aston Martin makes it 2 places lost in the space of 1 corner there for Farby. He drops down into 7th place. Could be under pressure from Hamilton, Walters, maybe even Fusilio as well. Fede now gets ahead of Zander, who's dropping down into 15th. It is really spicing up in the midfield of this race.
Yeah, it's really spicing up, like you say, and the fact that Denurko was able to keep up with those drivers, and now Hamilton has caught these drivers in front as well, means that Fabi's pace was pretty poor on his medium compound tyres. He was really struggling, and the fact that Brock was able to make that move down the inside of Denurko capitalised, I think, proving that Fabi really struggling at this point in the race on these tyres. He's already got Hamilton well within range right behind, and right behind that is Philip Wouters, and then right behind that is Fusilio on his softs. So already Fusilio was with Fabi, who was about 5 seconds behind Fabi a lap ago, and that gap has well and truly halved in the last lap with the overtakes that Fabi's had to defend. So yeah, I fear for Fabi here. I think he could get swamped by the end of this race.
Yeah, he's of course on those much older medium tyres, and he's the only driver in this train in the old medium tyres, as H-Eagle does finally come into the pits. We know Hamilton's not afraid of sending a move. I think this might even be a bit too far back for him, is it, into turn number 1? Yeah, decides better of it. Fusilio, though, down the inside of Walters, and the fact that he's able to take that line, get away from the corner, and still get the better traction shows just how good those soft tyres are at the moment. But you've got to use them. You've got to have put yourself in a position to use them with the fresher tyres as well, as Jensen's got past Fede, and well, Jensen's got past Lars, actually, who's lost 2 places in all of that. The hard tyres really not working out, as there's a yellow flag there. I'm not sure what that was for. I'm not sure whether there was anything with Asakome and Eagle coming out of the pits, but mediums to hards, definitely not the strategy. Walters is the only one in the points out of all that. He was only 2 seconds off his teammate when Isma come into the pits. He's not going to get any points.
Yeah, looking like he's not going to get any points, and he was comfortably the fastest driver on those mediums earlier on at the start of those that started on the mediums, wasn't he? He was comfortably faster. Fusilio could only just keep up with the front, and they dropped in the McLarens pretty quickly. So the fact that he's gone for this strategy and is already behind Fusilio and has now got Jensen and Fede catching him at a vast rate of knots just proves it's not the right strategy. Look at Fusilio on the back of Hamilton here, but the problem for Fusilio is Hamilton is all over the back of Fabi here. So it's almost going to be maybe a carbon copy of what happened with Fabi and his dive on H-Eagle earlier on. Is Fusilio going to force Hamilton to make an overtake on Fabi here into turn number 1? He's diving it from a long way back. We've seen so many of those overtakes today. Look at the grip compared to Hamilton coming out of the corner. He dived from a mile back, was all over the inside curb, and still got a better run out the corner. That is a lovely move from Fusilio, and he's going to surely have a move on Fabi here up to turn 4. Fabi's got absolutely no grip, but he's not got the gap really as Fusilio into turn 4. He'll wait for the time being as the cloud cover now starts to come over with, well, 4 laps to go when we next cross the line. I feel like weather may play a part, but I don't think we're going to see any sort of wet tyre.
I think the only way if we do it is if we get an extreme, it goes wet instantly. And I have seen it happen where within half a lap, all of a sudden, you've gone from dry tyres to intermediate tyres. If it starts raining this lap, that could still happen, but I don't see it, to be honest. I think we are going to stay dry now, right up until the end of the race. Matthew Alder is all over the back of Jaquita. He knows he needs to make moves, and he needs to start gapping these cars as well, and I just can't see him doing it at the moment. Zander picks up another time penalty. That puts him up into 9 seconds. Really not been a good start to the season for him. Asakome gets another one for corner cutting as well. I think he's just making up his own circuits at the moment. And here comes Fusilio again on the back of Fabi, and this is going to be, again, an extremely straightforward move. Up into 7th place. Danerco's penalty makes it a net 6th place. He's got Jensen all over the back of Walters as well, almost going 3 wide into the first corner then. The differing strategies causing some superb action in the final few laps here. Fusilio's up into 7th. H-Eagle now sets the fastest lap of the race. Jensen and Fede are going side by side as well through turn number 3. There's a bit of contact between them, and Jensen looked like he might be getting ahead of Walters. All of a sudden, he's shuffled down into 12th.
Yeah, really opportunistic for Fede there. Jensen was focused on the back of the Williams and feigned to the inside for turn number 2, and Wouters was held up by Hamilton, who was held up by Fabi, and Fede just drove clean around the outside. Very Alonso-esque from the start of the Spain race in 2013. If you remember, all the drivers stuck on the inside of Fede. He just drove clean around the outside in clean air and got the move done. Brilliant stuff from Fede, and now he's looking like he's going to be the one to maybe steal the points off of Wouters in this race, but Wouters could likewise steal points back off of Fabi and Hamilton here, who are really struggling. So yeah, they're all kind of falling apart at this point in the race, aren't they? Those on that medium-hard strategy, they're really starting to lose pace. Fusilio now onto the back of Brock, and this is for a net 5th in this race. This is a really good race from Fusilio so far. I think he's too far back for Matthew Alder to benefit from his penalty unless Matthew Alder starts losing pace or starts battling. But either way, Fusilio this season's been really good at getting solid results each race, and this looks like it's going to be another one. Brock too deep into turn 1 there, and Fusilio's just going to drive underneath him out of the corner. Surely he'll have the better run around the outside. Philip Wouters has spun at turn 1 as well. It's all kicking off. Fusilio surely is just going to drive clean around the outside of turn 2, and he does, makes it look easy. And that Max Wiesel with a time penalty in second place.
Max Wiesel with a time penalty. Matthew Alderman was pushing Jacques Ita through the final couple of corners. These medium runners are really starting to struggle, I think, Jack and Max, as Matthew's got a bit deep there. That's going to push him a long way offline. The gap goes from about 7/100ths of a second to 7/10ths of a second. All of a sudden, Dan Aiko's hard tyres now turning out to not be the worst strategy to be on all of a sudden. We were saying it was a bad idea at the start of the race, but he's got 3 seconds of time penalties, and he's going to lose out to Fusilio and Brock, but those on the mediums are really starting to struggle. Isma's got the gap up to above a second with 2 laps to go, and that's going to put Max under some pressure from Jacques Ita, who is on the oldest set of medium tyres, and therefore the one you might suggest is in a bit of trouble. Eagle then gets himself a time penalty. It is all going to kick off in the final 2 laps of this race. Max Wiesel, I think, is comfortably ahead of Jacques Ita, that he doesn't need to worry about it into turn number 1. What about into turn number 2? Jacques Ita not able to get the traction. He's got Matthew Alder all over the back of him. Fede has got ahead of Farby. It's all starting to happen here. And there's still the spectre of, will it start raining in the final lap? And there's still the spectre of, will anyone get a puncture?
Yeah, will anyone get a puncture? You would say Yakita's the one looking like he could be the case, but despite the fact that Max Wiesel's tyres are 2 laps younger, he seems to have just all of a sudden dropped all of his pace, and Nikita's pace doesn't seem too bad. Matthew Alder, of course, much fresher tyres, is fast, and what this is for Matthew Alder is a podium opportunity. Now that Max has got that time penalty and is slow, Matthew Alder could have a run and try and get that second place, as it has just started spitting with rain now. The rain is coming down. It's not heavy by the looks of things, but that could be a distraction for some of these cars. You can tell Matthew Alder is desperate to get past Yakita and have a run at Max Wiesel to try and salvage a podium out of this race, but at the moment it's all going to be about this last lap. He's going to have to make 2 laps on the last lap to make it work. It's going to be a bold lap for Matthew Alder if he can pull it off, but all of a sudden Max Wiesel, Yakita and Matthew Alder have just dropped pace compared to Isma, who's disappearing off into the distance now.
Yeah, Isma's disappeared into the distance. I feel like Matthew Alder would have the pace to stay with these drivers if he had some clean air at the moment, but getting clean air around here, we know how difficult that's going to be. Is he going to send one down the inside of Jacques Ita? He's going to go for it into turn number 1. Jacques Ita leaves him the space there, can't quite get the traction obviously on the curb, and he loses that position. Danirko and Fusilio are battling as well, and Asako's just come out of the pits. His retired car doing Danirko no favours whatsoever, but that is Fusilio up into 5th place. How much further can he get up the order on those fresh tyres now that it has started raining? Jensen's got ahead of Farby and Hamilton. Hamilton's going to get ahead of Farby, and I think he's going to try and fight back at Jensen. We've got 5 cars fighting over the same 5 metres of tarmac also there. Farby's just getting absolutely shuffled down the order here. Fede now gets a time penalty. Casper on the outside of Farby. What was looking like a straightforward points finish, he's now, going to be dropping a long way down the order. Max Wiesel's all over the road in the middle sector. Matthew Alder's going to try and go for the outside line. He's going to find himself getting blocked. He should be able to get the overtake done, can he? No, Max Wiesel's driving the widest Ferrari this side of the Buda River, but in the end he's had to give up, and there goes Matthew Alder up into 2nd place. And while all this chaos is happening in the Williams at the head of the field, as cool as you like, it is Isma round to the finish line. He takes victory here at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Matthew Alder is going to cross the line in 2nd. Jacques Ita goes up into that position. Let's see what happens. Fusilio gets 4th. Max Wiesel finishes 5th. Fusilio less than a second off a podium in the end. Brock, Danirko, Jensen, Hamilton and Fede, the final points finish. A dramatic final lap of that race.
God, it all blew up at the end, didn't it? That was not the result I was expecting. For 10 laps previous to that, you would have, like, Ambi up in 5th, and Hamilton was up there fighting as well, and they've all dropped, and other people have risen in all of that chaos as well. My oh my, what a crazy race that one was, but Isma untroubled. Once he got that move done on Max, he was clearly in the best position in this race and drove away while they were all fighting behind. But on top of that, great race today for Mercedes. 2 cars inside the top 4.
Yes, certainly. Jensen gets driver of the day there. I think there's many candidates you could give it to. And it was crucial for Matthew Alder that he got ahead of Max Wiesel in the end. If he hadn't have done that, he'd have lost out to Fusilio, and we've had 2 Mercedes on the podium. But it is a Williams on the top step, and it's almost a George Russell lookalike there from Isma. He takes the victory in this race. Jacques Ita gets his first podium of the season. And Matthew Alder, it's the first time he's been on the podium and not on the top step. He takes third, and let's not forget there was that incident with Hamilton earlier on. The rest of the provisional runners then, it's Fusilio in 4th place. Max Wiesel looked like he was going to finish 2nd with a couple of laps to go. He ends in 5th place. Brock in 6th, Dan Aiko 7th, Jensen and Hamilton in 8th and 9th. Fede just finishing in 10th place. Lars missing out on his comeback in 11th. Casper also in 12th. Fabian Walters ending up 13th and 14th. Going a bit too early on their pit stops, not working out. H. Eagle started 15th, finished 15th. Doesn't quite tell the story of his race. Zander was 16th. We saw Asacombe retire late on, and Corney the other retirement. On what was, you can only say, Aidan, an absolutely fantastic finish to that race.
Really fantastic finish to the race. Who said you can't overtake at Budapest? That race was full of them, wasn't it? And it was full of overtakes you don't often see. We often see a lot of easy DRS overtakes, but we saw drivers really sending moves from far back, going for different moves at different corners, trying switch back moves and things like that, setting up moves 2 or 3 corners in advance. And that's what you like to see, isn't it? You'd like to see really close wheel-to-wheel racing in ways that aren't maybe as artificial as easy DRS passes. So, yeah, brilliant stuff from all of our drivers here in this race. And fair play as well to all of them. That race was pretty much clean across the board.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Especially given at the end of the race, you had Farby on old set of medium tyres. You had Hamilton on there on a lot older hards than everyone else. You had Walters and a few others. The McLarens trying to make through the field on fresh hards. And then you had Fusilio, Jensen, Fede on their fresh soft tyres. Just so many different mixes of strategies. You didn't really know until the final lap which was going to be the best one.
Yeah, you really didn't know, did you? It kind of all converged in the middle at the very end of the race, but still maintained that medium-soft strategy worked beautifully for Fusilio. Good pace on the mediums at the start, and then being able to make the overtake stick when he needed to in that race. I think the undoing, possibly for Jensen in that race, maybe not getting a high position they did, was that it just took too long for him to get through some of the moves, but I don't blame him. I mean, it was utter carnage in the midfield. By the end of that race, it would have been difficult to spot an overtake if it was staring right at you. So, yeah, just still completely baffled by those that went for the medium-hard strategy. Wouters as well. Wouters was in such a good position in this race. He could have been the one that could have maybe stolen a podium in this race off of one of those top drivers, but in the end, ended up out of the points in 14th.
Yeah, I mean, in the first stint of the race, Fusilio was struggling to stay within a second at times of Walters, and all of a sudden, maybe he was saving his tyres in that first stint, and perhaps that's the reason why he didn't quite have the same pace. But in the final few laps, we said, I don't think he's going to catch up to Matthew Alder. He ended up less than half a second behind him, I think, at the checkered flag. Really close indeed. And that little bit of rain just spicing things up at the end as well. One more lap, it would have been, A, interesting to see how the drivers would have coped on a wetter track, and B, whether anyone would have got any punctures. A few drivers may be breathing a sigh of relief that it was a straightforward race and there were no safety cars.
Yeah, with no safety cars in that race, I think if we had seen a safety car, then we probably would have gone onto some sort of wet compounded tyre, because it did get a little bit slippy towards the end. I think Max being on old tyres maybe amplified that, but it was quite slippy at the end of that race. I will say I am amazed, like you said, that nobody got to the end of the race with a puncture, especially Nikita. Nikita pitted so early in that race, and remember, Nikita with a second place finish in that race, he started down in 9th place and was 9th in that queue. That early pit stop in the end, it was a gamble, but it was a gamble that paid off beautifully. Unlike for Eagle, unfortunately, his gamble didn't pay off. The rain didn't come early enough, and he didn't have the pace on the hard. So two sides really of how gambles can work in your favour and how they can't. And today, Nikita played it perfectly and got a second place.
Yeah, it is always that bit of risk you've got to take. What's going to happen with the weather? When is it going to rain? You know it's going to come between 45 and 60 minutes, but there's a lot of time in that window. How fast is the race going to be? Are we going to see any VSCs and safety cars? We didn't see any major incidents in that race, but there was obviously what happened with Alder and Hamilton, and judging by what Jensen's saying in the Twitter chat as well, there were perhaps a few little bits of bumping and grinding further down the field as well in the final few laps. Again, probably just a consequence of the different strategies, drivers knowing that they were having to make some moves, because there were some massive sends in that race.
Yeah, there really were some big ones, weren't there? I think the good thing was that everybody that was being overtaken in that situation saw it coming and left the room. But if that was maybe towards the end of the race, or maybe some other drivers that are a bit more aggressive, that could have been really horrible crashes for some drivers in that race. That could have been race pretty much ending crashes for some of those drivers. So fair play to those that were being overtaken for spotting them coming, and fair play to some of the drivers for pulling the moves off. I think still standing out in my mind, Fabi's overtake on H Eagle, despite obviously the difference in tyres. Fabi's dive at turn 1 on Eagle was so clean and so clinical, and Eagle was really, really smart to make sure that he left the room.
Yeah, definitely. We're having a few drivers are having a bit of trouble just joining the waiting rooms. I think we're going to head there and see if that just makes things work a bit nicer for them. Hopefully we'll be able to hear from the different drivers in this race, because I'm sure they'll all have different elements of what they want to say. But while we are waiting for them, let's perhaps just get up what things are going to look like for the rest of the season. It turns out our predictions didn't quite work out as well as we thought, although Dan Urco definitely shoved his way up the order towards the end. So you can see that is the calendar for the next few races. Austria next time out. Half the track's a DRS zone. I expect to see plenty of overtaking.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the very opposite of what this race was. It's going to be a massive DRS train as Austria, isn't it? It's, yeah, like it's like half the track is a DRS zone, and then the rest of the track, there's only about 4 proper corners in the rest of the track. So dirty air is not really that much of a factor at Austria. So that's going to be a very interesting race to watch. That one's going to be about managing penalties and pitting at the right time again. That's going to be crucial in that race as well. So, yeah, look out for that one to maybe be a little bit crazy. Unless, of course, we get weather interference, which we've had so many times this season. That's what, our 4th race that's had some sort of weather interference in it this season. So, yeah, weather's loving PSGL F1 at the moment, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it again in Austria because it is so common there.
Yeah, it is so common. Unfortunately, it looks like we're not going to be able to get any of our top 3 and 4 interviews, which is such a shame. But if you do want some more PSGL action, you won't have to wait too long, of course. As you can see there, Austria next time around. That's what it is for the PS top tier on the 7th of March. But you only have to wait for the 2nd of March to see the top tier on the PC side of things with Danfield and Ginger Andy. Let's not forget the lower PC tiers. They will be there on the Thursday as well as the lowest tiers on the PS platform. The rest of the PS tiers on Sunday and Monday. Myself and Aidan again at Austria at 8 p.m. Where will we see the victory come from this time? It was a pole to the win for Isma. Perhaps not quite as easy as he would have wanted with that rain at the end of the race. Matthew Alders at championship lead closes down ever slightly. Will he be back on top again in Austria, or will we see our 3rd different winner in 3 races? Take care of yourselves, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week. Goodbye.